Hello, Mighty Emotions community. Welcome to this month's podcast on relationships, but specifically on the topic of knowing our limitations in relationships and where to source our needs. How can we get what we need from our relationships, and how can we know where the connections we have with people maybe aren't going to meet our expectations, and getting into all of that. And the reason I wanted to talk about this topic is because I think when we are developing healthy relationship dynamics, we have to unlearn a lot of stuff that we kind of pick up in our youth, in our immaturity, about what relationships, quote unquote, should be and how they should be and how people should treat us. There's a big difference between knowing that we are worthy of our needs being met and having our needs met in relationships. There's a big difference between knowing our values and whether or not we share our values with people that we're in relationship with, and having expectations that we hold other people to, standards that we hold other people to. It's not that anything's wrong with having standards. It's important to have standards, but there has to be room for compassion and forgiveness. And this month in the membership, as we're exploring relationships, you're getting reflection questions, you're getting, video trainings on what it takes to have a healthy relationship, and having nuance and the emotions that we process along the way and we give others space to process. But this specific topic on knowing the limitations of our relationship is about setting realistic expectations for the relationships we have in our lives, not trying to make them something that they're not trying to change them necessarily, but knowing what they are, seeing them for what they are, being really present and clear about it so that we understand how to take care of ourselves, because that's what's really important. I know that in my youth, I lost myself a lot in relationships, and maybe that resonates with you. I didn't know who I was. I had really poor self-esteem. I didn't think I was worthy or deserving of love from anyone. And that led me to make a lot of poor decisions, let's say, poor relationship choices. And as I grew, I became really afraid of relationships. I became very resistant to them. I became really self-sufficient and independent. I didn't need anyone. And that hurt me a lot in my life. It wasn't good for my work experiences, my school experiences, my romantic relationship experiences. And so I had to learn a lot about what is realistic, what is healthy, what to expect, what not to expect. And so I hope that this episode is going to help you to look at your relationships differently, to look at your relationship dynamics differently, to give yourself grace and to give others grace and compassion. And to know that if you're struggling in a relationship right now, that it's not going to be the end of your world. It's not going to be the end of it all. And that it's okay in the sense that you can be okay without that relationship being exactly what you want it to be. It's about adjusting those expectations and adjusting the source of your needs. So let's start off by saying that when I'm talking about limitations in a relationship, I'm not saying that people should treat us however they want. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have standards for our relationships. We absolutely should have standards for our relationships. And we don't necessarily need to compromise these standards once the standards are based on our values and what we value, right? What I am saying is that you're a human being and I'm a human being, and we are interacting with other human beings. So if we know anything about ourselves, and we know how sometimes we mess up when we didn't mean to mess up, and sometimes we harm others when it wasn't our intention, and we feel guilt about that, or we feel shame about that, and we're willing to look at it and learn from it, and we're willing to give ourselves compassion, that is going to also translate into the expectations that we have for others. Always keeping at the forefront of any interaction with anyone, past, present, and future, that they're human, that you're dealing with other human beings and all that comes with that. And so that right there is the first limitation that we have to look at, right? We're not dealing with robots. We're not dealing with perfect people, ourselves included, right? And so there has to be a realistic expectation that sometimes someone's going to let you down. Sometimes someone's going to disappoint you. Sometimes someone's going to change on you, and it's going to be really startling. And you're going to be like, what the hell? You're not the person I knew. We no longer see eye to eye. We no longer share the same values. Or, maybe you're being more authentic now. And before you were putting on a mask because you didn't feel safe. And now you feel safe. And now the dynamic has to change. When you're dealing with humans and imperfect humans, it's really about tolerance. It's really about saying, I'm willing to look at deeper than the surface level here in this relationship dynamic. I'm willing to be compassionate. And that doesn't mean that we allow, like I said, people to get away with things or to violate our boundaries. Absolutely not. What I am saying is that we're dealing with people who we can expect to have challenges with. We can expect to have conflicts in our relationships because we're dealing with humans, right? So that's a really important limitation, to just level set your expectations and knowing that we're dealing with humans and they're imperfect and we're imperfect. And that's the starting point. That is the starting point. I've been hurt by so many people in my life, and really allowing myself to see them as human while keeping very firm boundaries in those dynamics, in those relationships, has allowed me to forgive them, has allowed me to feel softer toward them, has allowed me to not hold on to what happened, but say, look, I'm on the other side of it now. I'm setting these boundaries and I'm moving forward. But that person isn't going to be controlling me because I'm holding on to this anger and disgust and sadness and hate, right? I'm going to take responsibility for processing what that experience left me feeling and learning how to move forward and to not allow everyone to be a surrogate for that person. In my book, I talk about how the minds work and how the subconscious and unconscious and conscious layers of mind work, and how one of the filters in our subconscious mind, where everything is filtered, by the way, are these limiting beliefs that we create because we develop this association with certain traits about a person, and we assign everyone who shares similar traits the same association. So what I mean by that is my mother hurt me tremendously in my life. And for a long time, older women around her age, women that had certain mannerisms like her, would make me feel really unsafe. And I would be I would immediately have a trauma response. Like, I'd be triggered immediately upon interacting with them. I didn't trust them. I didn't feel okay. Why? Because I hadn't processed, the experiences I'd had with my mother, so that I could see those experiences as being directly connected to her and not to everyone like her. And so we do this in our relationships. We have these filters, and that's the next limitation, right? The first limitation is that we're dealing with humans. The next limitation is that we have these subconscious filters so that we are going through life on autopilot a lot of the time. This isn't a negative thing, right? These are built-in mechanisms to help us keep living, keep moving forward, keep doing what we have to do. It's our job to pause and slow down and to take control of these processes, these internal processes, so that they're not controlling us, so that we're not on autopilot doing things that leave us unfulfilled or affect the quality of our lives. And one of those things, those processes that we have to kind of take command of, which I talk about in chapter 2 of my book, is the subconscious limiting beliefs that we have and the associations that we have. This is an involuntary process, by the way. It's going to happen, whether we like it or not. It's about knowing, okay, in my relationships, where am I operating from a past experience? A lot of times, if we've been hurt in romantic relationships, we go into future romantic relationships with these pains that we haven't fully processed, and we project these experiences and these emotions and these feelings onto the person in our present. And it's not fair. It's not fair to them. They're going to make their own mistakes.